On this week's Energy Facts Chats with me, JP Warren, and
Mike Umbro.
We have our first guest on the line with Sarah Stogner with the Unicorn Lawyer, and we're diving in a whole realm of things. Mike?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting conversation talking about wellbore integrity issues, pressuring zones, improper injection, lack of regulatory oversight. We had a whole laundry list of issues there.
And we talked about what we can do as an industry to kind of clean up our backyard. That way before the government rolls in and kind of tells us what to do. So be sure to check this out, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Energy Facts Chats with me, JP Warren, and
Michael Umbro. How are you doing, JP?
I'm doing good, man. You have a good Christmas?
I had a great Christmas. I saw you were in Disney World. I knew you were going, but that looked magical.
You know what? Honestly, I didn't get it before, but my wife was very kind of promoting, taking her daughter there for the first time and all that stuff. She's 9 years old, and I get it now. Like, I was there. I was like, it's kind of a surreal feeling, though, being like a parent taking your kid there whenever you were a kid being brought there by your parents. So it was a good time, man. We're glad to be back here. We had the whole Southwest snafu, and pretty upset with him right now, and I'm kind of curious if that's going to change. But hey, look, I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in to Energy Facts Chats. This is episode 5 with me, JP Warren, Mike Umbro. This is our first guest we're going to have on this week, and obviously, if you've enjoyed these, please subscribe, please share them. All we're trying to do here is trying to bridge energy realities with energy expectations. So we're going to bring our first guest on. I'm pretty pumped about this, and this is for those that don't know. I'm sure everyone out there does know who this is. This is Sarah Stogner, aka the Unicorn Lawyer, and you can find that handle right here. I'm going to send that ticker along the body. On the bottom, you can find her on most social media platforms: TikTok, LinkedIn. Where else? Where else can we find you, Sarah?
Yeah, Twitter, Instagram. I actually got paid. I got paid for the first time ever from Instagram, a couple $100. I was like,
what?
Why did I get paid? Yeah.
Was it like a new H2S monitor? What was it?
Apparently you get paid for reels now. So what I do is I edit in a third-party software, and before I upload it to TikTok, and now I've just started uploading things to Instagram. So and I don't have that many followers on Instagram. So.
But you do have a lot of followers. So we're going to get this kicked off. And Sarah, thank you for tuning in. Sarah, can you kind of tell us where you're tuning in from right now? Where you're actually? I want to see it. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, you want to do the okay? So I am actually in the middle of a field in the Central Basin Platform of the Permian Basin. I'm next to one of my favorite zombie wells. This is an old water supply well that Gulf drilled back in the 60s. That's leaking radioactive brine right now. But I'm also right next to my zombie well mobile trailer. So it's got a camera, and I can't full-time stream yet because I don't have a static IP address, but it's coming.
Of course.
So just wait. Yeah, I'm in the middle of the field in West Texas on a Starlink. So thank you, Elon, for the great reception, because it works even better than my high speed at home.
Well, I think you probably just boosted our Twitter views right now by thanking Elon. Some algorithms going to pull that apart, and it's like the most watched video. So, Sarah, we obviously want to thank you for taking the time out of your day right after Christmas to join us on episode 5 of Energy Facts Chats. And I guess kind of give us a little kind of an elevator pitch on kind of who you are for those that don't know who you are. And let's talk about kind of some issues that are in your world that's obviously not just in your world, but in the community that's affecting the community that you're seeing right now. So give us the elevator spiel on kind of your background, who you are, and let's dive into the meat and potatoes, if you will, as we like to call it on Energy Facts Chat. We just termed that, but go with it.
Yeah. So I'm Sarah Stogner. I was born and raised in Alabama, Florida, California. Dad's an aerospace engineer, went to undergrad at LSU, stayed for law school, started representing oil and gas entities right out of law school, cut my teeth learning about complicated well control issues by suing insurance companies. So when operators have a blowout and they seek coverage under their well control policy and the insurance company denies coverage, I come in and sue the insurance companies. So I actually cut my teeth on a couple big CO2 blowouts that I learned all about Boyle's Law and, some of the big issues of reservoir management and wellbore integrity and things like that. And then last summer moved out onto a cattle ranch, and we had an old well that Chevron had plugged come unplugged, and it took them 12 weeks. It was flowing 10-pound brine at surface. Wow. And I knew from my past experience. Well, shit, we spent lots of time and effort trying to recover about $9 million in proceeds from an insurance company when an operator had to buy calcium chloride to weight up the water to try to kill the CO2 flood. And so I knew it was already flowing kill weight fluid. It must be really bad. And here we are a year and a half later, really fighting the regulatory agencies to try to hold the bad operators responsible so that the good ones can continue to be in business and be competitive.
And let's just to clarify real quick, and Sarah, this is obviously something that if they're viewing your online content, or if you're seeing this, people might assume that you're anti oil and gas, you're against the oil and gas industry, you're against energy and all that stuff. But that's actually if people actually get to know you and actually listen to some interviews or conversations with you, that's the furthest from the truth.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very much pro energy. I understand the realities of I think we consume 100 million barrels a day of oil, right, in the world. It's necessary for our modern reality. I like to tell people we have 1,100 people moving to Texas every single day. It's not energy transition; it's energy expansion. And I'm a humanist. I want people to have the best life possible, but we have to do it the right way because I want my grandbabies to be able to go fishing and have clean water to drink.
So I kind of want to ask a couple questions. Mike, I see your brain going right now. Whenever your brain's going, I get excited because you have the brightest questions out there. So Sarah, I guess my question is this. You started kind of getting some, online exposure, some serious claim to fame after that the red bucket thing, probably about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. That's when you started kind of campaigning for, more transparency when it comes to the regulations versus kind of what's going on the well side. Why is this? And part of the Energy Facts Checks is not to just kind of have conversations that kind of break out of our echo chamber, right? So why is this such a for the common person living in the community? Why is this such a big deal?
Yeah, I think it's because as an industry, we've done a really bad job over the years of educating people, right? We've known how indispensable we are to modern day life.
Right.
And so we've just, for the most part, put our heads down, gotten to work, and provided the energy that the rest of the world relies upon, right? Mm-hmm. And what I think we've done a bad job of is, one, finally recognizing science, right? Like global warming is real, climate change is real. But the solution's not to go and start pumping CO2 underground to sequester carbon in a false hope of saving the world. No, I have every hope and confidence in humankind to evolve and figure out the technology that's needed to make our lives reality. But what we have to do is be honest, and we have to be honest about our consumption, and we have to be honest about what it takes to get the oil and gas or the energy, regardless of where it's coming from, and then make long-term policy decisions based on those realities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So pretty much what you've done, and I'm not sure if there's been a strategy or not, other than just kind of trying to expose, I guess, what's going on to certain well sites out there, old wells, and the new term zombie wells we're going to get into in a little bit.
I like that.
I do too, and I honestly want to talk about that because we're seeing that a lot on we're seeing a lot of talk about that on LinkedIn, but we're also seeing a lot of talk about that on your channels and all that stuff. So I want to get into that here in a little bit. So I guess your strategy when it comes to kind of exposing the flaws or where the industry could do better, I guess it started off as kind of a shotgun approach, right? Like there's so much stuff going on right now in your world. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to start looking at this. I'm going to start looking at this. Has your strategy changed at all when it comes? I've seen your content evolve and all that stuff, but has your strategy changed at all when it comes to highlighting these issues on the field level?
Yeah, I mean, so in the beginning, my goal was really to keep it within the family. I keep making the analogy of the oil field mafia is I wanted to come in. I didn't want my content to get outside of our industry, right? I was making content for oil and gas people to come in and say, oh shit, like that's
this
not
is
okay.
Happening.
This is happening. And I have that. I 95% of people who see my things go, that's not okay. This is giving us all a bad rap. We got to do something about it. And then there's the 5% that say it came from the ground, Karen, get over it. It's just going back where it came from. And it's like, well, tell me you don't understand geology without telling me you don't understand geology. And so again, guys in the field that there's just such a separation. So has my strategy? Yes, because I've realized that nothing's going to happen until everyone is knowledgeable and puts pressure on their elected officials. Unfortunately, follow the money.
Where is okay? So that's kind of what I ask you now. Where is the biggest issue that you're seeing for these things? I guess not to be taken care of. Is it the company policy? Is it the officials? Where are you seeing the big disconnect? The biggest area of improvement, if you will.
The biggest issue is a complete and utter lack of enforcement of existing regulations. That the Railroad Commission is bought and paid for by the industry. It would be like if Wall Street could elect this SEC and call them the Banana Commission.
Okay. See, this is interesting to me because this is where I was excited to have you as our first guest, because it's the exact opposite out here where we have the California Geologic Energy Management Division.
Where they've got
the regulator has actually removed the word oil from their name because they want nothing to do with it. So we have CalGEM, but you actually, and just to take a quick step back, you actually ran for a position as a commissioner on the Railroad Commission, which is Texas regulatory body, correct?
Correct. It's a 3-person commission that's elected to 6-year terms. So one of them is up every 2 years, and they are charged with regulating oil and gas, intrastate pipelines, and surface mining for things like coal and lignite.
That's a big responsibility. And then they must have thousands of employees.
There's about 1,000 employees, and 1/3 of the state's operating budget comes from oil and gas. So yeah, it's I would say arguably the most powerful officials in the state of Texas, and most voters have no idea what they do. They're like, I've got a railroad crossing in my backyard, and those horns, every time they come through, they blow that horn. And I'm like, I am so sorry, sir, but we'll have no control over that. And then they're like, well, I want to talk about abortions. And I'm like, I won't have any control over that either. But let's talk about cement integrity and casing. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the reason that I've been sitting in AADE meetings, and they're talking about 4- and 5-string casing designs to overcome shallow subsurface crossflow. And why aren't we talking about why are we having to change our wellbore design? 10 years ago, a 3-string design was sufficient. Now you're having to do 4- and 5-string designs because you've got shallow flow. Why aren't we talking about where is the flow coming from? We can't just engineer our way into getting the oil and gas anymore. We've got enough oil and gas. Now we have to plan that development. And what are we going to do with the water?
Well, I think that's why this is so important, because right now you're saying, you have these people saying, oh, the railroad passes here, the railroad passes here. That is kind of the whole point of this Energy Facts chats. It's not to speak to the people that kind of understand about whether it's the 3-string or 4-string casing design or anything like that. It's to kind of break it down on the community level. So, for example, Mike and I had a conversation about what's your electricity makeup. What's powering the electricity in your house, and I thought that was interesting because after seeing that, I started seeing all these different posts about the different energy mixes of what's creating electricity. So okay, my browser lost connection, but can you hear me?
We can hear you.
It's probably
that got big. So a week after we did that, JP, you were at Disney World, and then the whole country went cold, and then everybody's posting the electricity mix.
I know,
New England, and we were on top of that one, weren't we?
That one.
Oh, we lost JP.
No, I'm here. Don't worry about. Don't worry about that.
Just I'm hopeful that we get this program outside of the oil and gas echo chamber. So just for a basic education for folks, the way I see it, when you're producing from an old well, you're probably producing somewhere on the order of 10 to 15 barrels of water for every 1 barrel of oil that you're extracting. At least, maybe more. So out here, I'm looking at CalGEM's idle well inventory list, and we have 38,849 idle wells as of 2021 when this was last done. And what that does for folks like me as a small operator, it makes it very hard, because the regulator in our case, in our state, that doesn't want oil and gas will say, there's 40,000 idle wells. They're leaking. There's fugitive methane emissions at the wellhead, which is really to be determined, and the science is still out. But they'll make all these scientific conclusions that are very damning towards the industry. And it sounds like it's almost the opposite in Texas with the Railroad Commission, which is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I've got right now an operator, maybe a mile and a half over this side of my shoulder, that had a flow line leak that they didn't tell anyone about. I stumbled upon it at 4:30 yesterday afternoon. They're literally just at the pad site taking dust and covering up the oil spill at the well. They don't tell me that 20 yards away there's probably 50 barrels of oil that are in the middle of the pasture from another busted flow line. And it's like, look, guys, a little bit of communication, right? Under the law, the oil and gas operator is allowed to use what's reasonable and necessary of the surface, and they're operating out here under a 1921, I think, or 23 1920s mineral lease, when at the time the surface and the minerals were owned by the same landowner, and they entered into these huge 20,000 acre leases. They had 20-year delay clauses, so they really didn't start developing this field until the early 1940s. And they immediately drilled a lot of wells and then started trying to water flood it, which, for those that don't know, right, means they just take water and they re-inject it into the formation to flush that water, to flush the oil and gas out with the water.
Right.
And what they've done now in Texas is all of these, they're supposedly water floods, but they're just disposing of salt water now. Like, there's no pattern, there's no thought. And so what really irks me is we've got super majors like Chevron, who are out there claiming to be the human energy company and promoting solar and all of these alternative green energies. And at the same time, they're dumping their asset retirement obligations from these old wells onto smaller operators, and they're not selling them, they're assigning them. So they'll do an exchange. It's like, hey, I'm a small operator. I've got these deep drilling rights over here in the Delaware or the Midland Basin on either side of us. I will give you those rights, and then in exchange, they give me 30 pages of old stripper wells, which are these wells, right, that don't have very much production.
Right.
And they don't tell them about, oh, by the way, we were trying to plug a well the other day and we took a kick, and we don't know why there's pressure at this zone where there shouldn't be pressure, and no one's talking about it. And the Railroad Commission knows. Everything's done over the phone intentionally. They don't put things in writing. I mean, I thought Louisiana was corrupt until I moved to Texas and started getting into the Railroad Commission.
Everything over the phone. That's some 1970s way to do some work.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and landowners are completely left out of the conversation. So you can't have and what happens is these operators will then destroy the land, and so they'll buy it. They buy it from the rancher at 3 times market value. So out here you can buy acreage still at about $1,500 an acre. So it's a whole lot cheaper to pay, $3,000, $4,500 an acre, just buy up the surface and have a hunting lease in West Texas, than it is to actually come out and properly address your wellbore mechanical integrity issues. Meanwhile, I've got smaller operators. I still represent oil and gas clients, right? I had a guy call me the other day and say, hey, I've got a field that eventually I wanted to flood with CO2, and we've got an injection well now that's pressured up all of a sudden, and the Railroad Commission's sending me a nasty gram because the CO2 flood next door has now trespassed because they haven't kept it in their zone. And he's got CO2 on a well now. So now his well bores that aren't meant for CO2, right? You use chrome and other things to handle the carbonic acid and all these things. And so as an operator, he's getting cited by the Railroad Commission when it's the super major next door who's screwing it up.
Right.
And so that's what's so infuriating.
So let me ask you a question, Sarah, before we kind of dive into the zombie well term that you've been talking about. For you to, I guess, take the stance and start, producing all this content and showing all this. What is? And I remember having a conversation with you through this, and obviously, I think this gets lost a little bit. What is your biggest fear? Should these issues not be handled correctly? What's your biggest fear? What's driving?
The federal government come in and shuts down oil and gas, and we have a complete global economic collapse. Like I'm starting to be a prepper. I've sold my houses. I'm I don't know what to invest in. I have a plane. I have
Crypto.
a Cessna. No, like none of it. I don't trust it. I don't want cash right now at 10% inflation.
Right.
I haven't touched my stuff in the market because I don't need to retire for another 30, 40 years, right? Like, so I think that we are in it sounds crazy, but I worry about like another dark ages. Like I really worry about total economic collapse, a complete Christian overtaking Christian nationalism, and utter economic collapse. Yeah.
Okay, so let's. I mean,
Okay.
What do you want me to do, Mike? Unwrap that?
Well, let me bring in one point because I think she's touched on a number of things there, and the majors is one thing that I feel as an industry we need to start recognizing that there are majors and then there are the rest of us. And it's very hard to speak out against the majors because if you're working for a service company, a tool manufacturer, provider, you're not going to say anything because you want their business. But if you're an independent operator, you also might not be saying anything because you might be leasing land or leasing your minerals off of one of these big companies. So it creates this situation where people in the industry are like, oh, idle wells don't matter. You know, that kind of from the outside the industry perspective, I could see most of the general public saying, well, look at what these companies do. They don't take care of their legacy issues. And they can legitimately say that because as a collective industry, we don't. And I was just scrolling through the list here. Era Energy, which is a JV between Shell and Exxon out here, which recently sold over 8,000 idols. Chevron, over 10,000 idols. CRC, which was Oxy sold their California stuff and got the hell out of California, over 8,000 idle wells. So there you've got 30,000 of these 38,000 idle wells are the three biggest operators that, oh, by the way, are making announcements. Oh, we've got purple and pink hydrogen projects. We're dumping $3 billion into. It's like, who cares? Go plug all those wells. It's ridiculous. And that's the thing. And I think that's where your strategy, maybe that's where you said, forget it. I'm just going to blow the lid off this thing because it is ridiculous. If you're an operator and you're telling me you have billions of dollars to invest in something that is 20, 30 years down the road, maybe, but you can't fix your problems. That's a failure of ESG on every level. That's a failure on the environment. That's a failure to protect socially, you know, the people around us. And it's bad governance because you're not handling your responsibilities. And so it's amazing to me that you're the only one that's really championing this whole, hey, let's clean up our kitchen sink.
Yeah, backyard.
Yeah. Right, everyone's afraid to admit the problem. And I'm like, guys, we've got to say, and look, there's good ones out there, right? Like the Pioneers and the Diamondbacks. Like, I need them to be really mad. I need them to be going to Texoga and saying, no, like I publicly quit Texoga when they took a stance against winterization. They said, no, we're against any sort of winterization requirements. And I was like, guys, we can't say that natural gas is the solution and then not take steps to make sure that we can get the natural gas to where it needs to go in the event that we really need the natural gas. Like, that's insane. And so you've got these people that all they care about is their own interests. And again, I say follow the money. It's like, who are they sleeping with and who are they getting money from? Because that's what people are motivated by. And when you know that, you can figure it all out. And you look and our elected officials, like I'll call them out by name, the Craddock family in Texas. My goal is that they will end up in jail. Tom Craddock has been an elected official for over 50 years. He owns non-operating working interests in these wells that are currently blowing out subsurface in the middle of the basin in Crane County, which is the district that he represents. And oh, by the way, he's on the Natural Resources Committee, which is the one that sets the legislation that the Railroad Commission then enacts. And you know who's on the Railroad Commission? Christy Craddock, his daughter. You know what her qualifications are? She went to law school. She started working for a lobbying firm. Daddy gave her $500,000 out of his political coffers because you can do that because we don't have any donation limits. So he takes $500,000 from his campaign money, hands it to her to run. 10 years ago, she runs. And I asked her at an event about 4 years ago when I was still rah-rah, like all cheerleader of like, we're so great, we're saving the world. Why don't we change the name of the commission to accurately reflect what it does so that people in Texas can be educated? And she told me, oh, because it's not fiscally responsible, it would cost $1 million for us to change our logo. And I actually believed it.
I just did mine for free this week.
And I was like, I mean, I get that. Like trucks, you got to change the stickers on the trucks and all this. And now I'm like, oh my God. Like, no, it's because they enjoy that people don't know, that they're not educated.
Ignorance is good sometimes for some people.
And so we have got to say, look, we haven't always done it perfect. We've learned a lot over the years, but guess what? Even the best cement is not a 10,000-year solution. And even the best cement is not meant to withstand, decades of overpressurization and caustic and right, like we've been water flooding these fields and they weren't sour, they didn't have hydrogen sulfide on them 50 years ago, and now we've got 20,000 parts per million hydrogen sulfide because we injected dirty water. Bacteria have been farting, and we've now created toxic gas that's leaching to surface and killing people, right? Like, that's a problem. It's a problem.
That's a big problem.
And meanwhile, we've got people planning CO2 floods out here and refusing to acknowledge the issue of the zombie wells, which are these wells springing back to life, right?
So I think I kind of want to wrap this conversation up in the next 3-4 minutes. And then if y'all don't mind, let's stay on and have a zombie well discussion. That way we can kind of release a 2-part segment about this, because I think this is all good stuff. If you're okay with that, Mike.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Babies in the cages and everything. You're good.
My zombies are occupied.
Your zombies are.
2 of them are at a friend's house and one's at my parents.
So Sarah, you're talking about a systematic, pretty much rebuild of what's going on right now. So what is, I guess, the reality on the changes that you, I guess, in the short term that you'd like to see and that are achievable, and also, I guess, the future of I guess, the solution of this in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, look, legislation, Austin, we have gotten Austin's attention. We have Wall Street's attention. We have DC's attention. And so I have lots of little birdies everywhere that tell me like, hey, this is what's happening. And so things are moving. Right. I've had operators tell me, look, even though the rules don't require that we circulate cement to surface now on our long string, we are. And then I have other people, right? Like little things.
So you're seeing steps. You're seeing steps in the right direction. Good. Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing steps in the right direction. And at the same time, I'm also seeing Chevron double down. I mean, they've created a fake website called PermianProud.com, proudly sponsored by Chevron, where all they do is share good news in the Permian so that people have a positive name association with Chevron. You know, right? They went and donated $10,000 the other day to our local food bank and made the local newspaper because thank you, Chevron. It's like, well, if you actually cared about the people, you would plug the wells. Oh, but guess what? $10,000 doesn't even bring a pulling unit onto location, much less plug one of these wells. Oh. Right? Like, so that's what it's. Yes, I'm seeing movement. I'm bringing attention. And I'm hopeful that I'm getting the good operators angry enough to really step up and say, okay, this is ridiculous. We're doing the right thing. We're shutting in things. We're plugging things, not because somebody tells us to, but because it's the right thing to do. Right. Right. And the good thing is with the shale revolution, the oil's not going anywhere. Right. The gas isn't going anywhere. It's there. You've got your lease. It's not going to be sucked out by your neighbor. So let's figure it out and move forward together with a long-term plan of like, this industry is not going anywhere in the near term, but it's probably going to look very, very different in 100 years. Let's get honest about how that looks. And maybe Joe Blow for $750 shouldn't be able to get a well in Texas, but that's all it takes. Like I can go get a P5 with $750 and start operating wells.
That's it. That's the bonding requirement. Is there no bond requirement?
There is the maximum bond. Well, let's end on this. The maximum bond in the state of Texas is a global bond for $250,000.
Stop it.
Welcome to Texas,
so
Mike.
Chevron,
we put up a $200,000 bond for our little baby lease with very little liability.
Yep.
The 3 of us had to pony it up back in 2018. Wow.
It was a different time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but $2,500 a well maximum. $250,000. And so my proposition is right now, tomorrow, if you drill a new well, include in your AFE the 100,000. It's a $10 million drill. Put another $100,000 on there for your P&A. Invest it somewhere. Let that interest accumulate. Let's put that towards orphaned wells, other places. Like, we could immediately stop the bleeding, right?
Yeah.
But it takes people saying we have to immediately stop the bleeding, and operators saying we need better bonding. We need better cementing, and we need better bonding. And we have to go after these guys that just continue to Ponzi scheme these operators. They'll drill wells, and then they'll bankrupt them intentionally and walk away and leave it to the taxpayers to clean up after them. Like, if you've done that before, once, I forgive you. Twice, you don't get to do it again. Like, no, you don't get a P5. Like, let's have some enforcement, and let's figure out who the bad guys are. There's not that many of them, and let's hold them accountable.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. For those that want to get in touch with Sarah or kind of want to see some of the content what she's talking about, she's very transparent about that. You can find her at the Unicorn Lawyer on TikTok, on Twitter, and all that stuff. Tons of good content. Sarah, I want to thank you for your time. If you don't mind sticking around so we can discuss zombie wells. You said previously that people are motivated by sex and money. Not Mike and I. We're motivated by the truth on Energy Facts.
That's right.
That's what we're motivated by. The facts.
That's because you have enough sex and money, you know.
So, I don't know about money. I'm 42 years old. I'm renting, so let's not talk about that. So it's not doomsday prepping. I'm just renting. So anyway, Sarah, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in to Energy Facts Chats, and we're going to do another one to talk about the zombie wells that are kind of raising popularity across different, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, the news. Zombie wells is taking center stage. We're going to kind of discuss that on our next Energy Facts Chats. But thank you everyone for tuning in and trying to bridge the energy expectations with energy realities.
Thank you.